Alexander. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the Immergence Show.
Thank you so much, Nico. Thank you for inviting me to come on.
Awesome. My pleasure and honor to have you. Very excited. And I want to say thank you to our amazing engaged audience that are already here. Jean, Rihanna, Brian, Sophia, Felipe. I missed you all last week. We didn't have the show, but now we're back with a great episode. So let's get into it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got into this space and all the great work that you've done. I just touched on it, but I want to hear the full story from yourself.
Sure. So, as you said, Nico, I earned my PhD in English literature, and right after that, went to work in academic publishing as an academic journal editor. And so, while it might seem strange that I went from literature to working in XR, there are a lot of threads that I can pull through, and a lot of things that I can identify that led me to be in this space eventually. And one of them was that when I was working in academic publishing, started 20 years ago, there had been a lot of changes taking place. It used to be that academic journals would be distributed through physical copies being mailed to subscribers at their homes, and physical copies would be at the libraries. And so once these journals were available digitally, it really changed the ways that people accessed them. They would typically start to access them through their library's subscription electronically. And so there were fewer individual subscribers. And so it really changed the whole business model of academic publishing, which also, as I began to recognize, had a knock-on effect on the whole academic system, which of course is built a lot on publishing work and the tenure system. And of course, then there was the issue of increased cost to academic libraries to subscribe to these publications. But at the same time that this was happening, there was still sort of this idea that the print publications were the real deal, and that electronic publication was just not quite as proper or was not as authoritative, and it was not to be trusted so much. And so we had situations where we would have articles that it would take months and months and sometimes years to get them into print. Meanwhile, I kept thinking, why aren't we distributing these digitally? Not only would it be more instantaneous, much faster publishing cycle for the authors, but we also could overcome some of the other limitations of print media, like being able to include more color photos, because printing color photos is costly. Or we could even include videos or data sets. There could be interactive elements, and so there were a lot of that sort of multimedia environment. The opportunities for that is one of those sort of threads that I pull through. And I was also kind of interested in the ways that documentary film was being used as teaching tools. And I was thinking about film being used as a novel form of research. And another of my interests was in art, great interest in art. And looking back to, say, the 60s and 70s, when the video cameras came out and became more widely accessible, that made it possible for more people to create videos that were art videos or documentaries, whatever they were. More people were able to produce this sort of content because the video cameras were cheaper, they were more portable, they were easier to operate. And so many women started creating videos, art videos and documentaries, and they became really sort of dominant or prolific in those spaces. And so the key insight that I drew from observing that was that changes in technology or technological changes open up new creative possibilities and make it possible for more people to tell their stories.
Love that. And now with XR glasses and many other ways of gathering information, as you said, it's just getting easier and more accessible. So powerful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I heard from you this concept of empathy machine for VR. So I would love you to tell us that story of how you got into the VR and what was the exciting elements and how has that evolved for you?
Sure, sure. Well, as I said, I was interested in art and particularly the work of a lot of women artists who were at first using things like video technology. But then also I discovered that there were a lot of women who were using things like VR. And this fascinated me. And I started trying to read everything I could and learn everything I could about this new technology. And I saw the famous Chris Milk TED Talk, where he proclaims that VR is the ultimate empathy machine. And a lot of people have had problems with that sort of statement since there. And of course, you know, any sort of machine can be used for good or for ill. It's what purpose that we put it to, right? No machine can actually make you empathetic. But Milk was particularly talking about 360-degree video at the time. And I believe that that ability to use 360 video, to be able to step into someone's world and to see what they see in their environment is very powerful and compelling. To be able to immerse someone into what you want them to see. And I do think that whether or not we accept the idea that VR is the ultimate empathy machine, many, many, many of us in this industry are kind of motivated by the idea that with XR, as we call it now, and more generally, we can do some things differently and better, and that there's a chance to reach people in a new way. And there is Lisa Masseri. She's an anthropologist at Yale who published a book called In the Land of the Unreal. It's set in Los Angeles. She did an ethnographic study, particularly of women in the VR space in about 2018, and it's fascinating to read. I highly recommend that book. Kent Bai also did an interview with her on his podcast, which is really great. But there was this idea among this group of women that she was studying that VR or XR was somehow different. You know, it was a different kind of technology. It was a space that would be more welcoming to women, and it could be something better. And I think that that is still prevalent among many of us, that we still have this fervent belief in what this technology is capable of and how it can do things for us as humans, and in some ways actually make the world a better place.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. I'm curious, you came in with this, inspiration that this is great for empathy, but over time that now you've been in this space for many years, do you still believe that this is like VR is a good place for creating empathy, or is it more about learning and understanding? Like, where do you think is kind of the core power of this technology?
Well, I don't know if I would say that any one of those is the core power, because I think they are all relevant and it can be used for
Right.
all of those sorts of things. Yeah, so I don't know if that I would say that any one of those is the core
Got it.
power of it.
Thank you. And maybe you can share with us about your experience with 360 camera. You started with that, and I'm curious, if someone is, interested into this space, should they start creating content like you did? Maybe tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure, sure. Well, in October of 2016, I bought a Samsung Gear 360 camera, and it is an adorable little camera if you've ever seen a picture of it. And I just fell in love with it. And I didn't have a background in video, but as I indicated before, I was interested in video art, and in video for documentary. And this was a new kind of video camera that one could just hold in one's hand. And I found that I was able to film and edit and create 360-degree videos with no prior experience. And so I could go somewhere and I could hold it in my hand, and it was as if the viewer was standing by my side, when you put on the headset. And I just found this really empowering. And then I thought, when I moved to Pittsburgh in 2017, I created this program called PGH in 360 Youth Perspectives, where I partnered with community organizations who already had relationships with teens. I ended up working with people aged anywhere from 13 to 23 in these programs. But we would put on these boot camp style workshops where I would teach them to work in teams to create 360-degree videos that shed some light on their perspectives on the world and what they thought about issues in their neighborhoods or their cities. And they would come up with the concept. I would have taught them about how to film for 360, and they would edit it. They would add transitions and titles, and so they would come out with a finished product at the end. And that was really exciting. But unfortunately, that those programs stopped with the pandemic in March of 2020.
Oh, it's sad. Thank you for sharing. So did you guys take those 360 videos and then put it on VR to kind of share the stories? What happened next?
Yes. Well, we made them available on YouTube as well, so that people can, because you can view 360 videos on a phone or a tablet or a computer, and you can manipulate the screen and move around them. Obviously, they're not as powerful as when you view them in VR headsets. And so we would have events where we would give people the opportunity to put on headsets to watch them, including another program that I started working with Pittsburgh Community Television, where we called it Community XR. And we would go to a different neighborhood, a location, an accessible community spot once a month, and bring equipment like 360 cameras and VR headsets, and even AR headsets, some earlier AR headsets, just to get people, to expose people to the technology. And so that would be, one place to show these videos as well. But the idea of Community XR was just basic digital literacy. Let people try this stuff out and see what it is, because not everyone is going to go out and spend hundreds of dollars on a VR headset, especially if they've never had the chance to try it.
Such a good point. And this local groundwork is so important as more and more technology is advancing. So thank you so much for doing that and sharing. We have a question from Shadi asking about, how your background in English literature helped you understand the storytelling aspect of XR in a way that someone from a purely technical field might not. Is there anything else you want to?
Yeah. Well, a lot of the my research and work was on fairly experimental type of literature, and I think that so some of the work I studied was doing things like there would be poems with one word or with no words at all, and just color marks on paper. And so thinking about what makes that a poem, and so thinking about that sort of thing is really exciting to me, because I think that there are so many possibilities to cross the traditional genres that we think of. But when it comes to storytelling, there are many different types of stories that can be told, and in most traditional narratives are set within worlds, right? And that is hugely important to the story that is being told in most cases. So being able to think about a world and how that influences a character and how they interact and navigate through that world is one of the ways that I think one of the things that translates over
Amazing.
very well, right?
Yes, powerful. Thank you so much for sharing. Awesome. Let's get into this topic of stealth learning, this brilliant term that you described to work, describe the work that you're doing with children, XR tools, and then later with enterprises. Can you unpack this concept for us a bit? And how did you intentionally design an experience where valuable learning becomes the natural byproduct of fun, creativity, and play?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, well, this sort of insight came to me through work that I was doing with working with little kids in contexts like after-school arts programs, and this is something I was asked to do. I had been in higher ed, and in addition to working in academic publishing, I worked at the Women's College at Rutgers and ran all sorts of different programs there. So had a lot of engagement with students, both academic and co-curricular. But and then working with teens was not that far of a step back. In fact, some of the college students were teens, of course. But when I was asked to work with little kids, I was petrified. I had no idea, what I was going to do with these small children, but they were insistent that they wanted me to do this. So I used a platform called CoSpaces to teach little kids to create 3D worlds and stories. It was pretty easy to do. They could bring in their characters and 3D objects and create scenes that had some animations. And then once they created them on their Chromebooks, they could then view them in a cardboard headset. I'm kind of a big fan of some of these lower tech devices, although for my personal use, I prefer to use the more advanced ones. But so for little kids, using these cardboard headsets allowed them to just put the device up to their face and see their world or their story in action, and then just quickly put it down and laugh and run off, which is the sort of thing that they would often do when they're little 7-year-old kids. That's the sort of thing that they do. They're not going to pay attention to anything for a very long time. And I was a fan of the cardboards because they weren't putting any weight on their little necks. They weren't sort of trapped into there. I thought that was something that really worked. But the thing is that these kids were so excited about being able to create their own worlds and stories that there was one little girl who would cry when her mom would come to get her at the end of the day. And but there were things that they were learning that they didn't really realize. So CoSpaces uses these code blocks, little coding blocks. And so this one little 7-year-old girl was creating a scene in which she wanted a car to drive down a street and turn a corner, stop at a crosswalk, let a woman walk across, and then move forward. And so things like to get the car to move the way she wanted to, she had to input how far it was going to travel in how many seconds. And so she was learning about speed as a relationship between distance and time. And then when she wanted the car to turn, she couldn't just use a simple command to make it go to the left because it would just slide over to the left. It wasn't turning. So she had to learn about angles of rotation and what a 90-degree angle was, because she had to input that into there. And she didn't care about those things. She cared about her car moving the way she wanted it to in that world. But she was exposed to these kinds of concepts, these sorts of learning in the process of doing something that she loved to do. That was a lot of fun for her. Yeah, so but at the same time, she was able to maybe make a connection between those abstract kind of concepts and something that she could visually see and understand.
Love this example. I mean, growing up, many kids don't like math and physics, and they always said, like, why am I learning this? Like, what is the point of this? So this is such
Right.
a good way of showing the application without, saying like you need to learn this. So this is part of a practical experience. Amazing, and I'm sure it's great experience also for their creativity to develop using these tools. And was it like a game that they could play?
Well, those were not. They typically weren't games. They were more just little stories that they were creating. They were building the worlds, and then they would have characters, and there would be different scenes, and there
Interesting.
was some animation involved. But they weren't necessarily games.
Uh, it's interesting to see this well adopted. I don't think even now many schools are doing that. So really powerful that you did this.
Yeah, and I do want to say too. I want to give a shout out to the community educators who recognize that this sort of technology is going to be an important part of our future, and that the children they were serving needed to learn about it. And they knew that the children in these particular organizations, the children that they were serving, weren't getting that kind of education from their schools. So these community educators, after school educators, they were keen to expose the children in their programs to this. And so they really had their finger on the pulse, in a way. And maybe too, because they were able to be a little more flexible than the schools in terms of incorporating these technologies, into what the kids were learning. Um,
Amazing.
yeah.
I hope this inspires our audience to go and show this to their kids. I know Ian has a daughter that is probably interested in this. Very good example. Thank you. And so now, how did you kind of learn, some, insights from this experience that then when you were helping brand executives or creative technologists to use this distilled learning playbook and accomplish business goals? What were some of the learnings from this?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think for things like trainings that it doesn't have to be boring to be effective. And in fact, for things like demos and trainings, they're more likely to be effective if they're fun, and if the learner or the guest has agency in the experience, if they're able to do things and interact. Active learning is far more effective. And the rewards, I mean, through some kinds of gamification elements, even if it's like a little dinging sound or a star that pops up when they get something right. Those activate the reward centers of our brains, and everyone loves being told that they've done something right, even if it's just the
Yes.
sound of a little bell. I mean, it's amazing how effective that is in us thinking, oh wow, I did something right, yay. So I think making sure that the training gives agency and interactivity, and that it makes use of the affordances of XR, right? Which are so much more than you can do in a print document or a PowerPoint presentation. Um, you know, making full use of the affordances of the technology is really important.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. Now let's talk about XR Women, this great organization. We briefly talked about it with Sophia, and I love that you powerful women came together, each from your own angle and perspective, and wanted to bring more women together. So I'm curious, what was your motivation behind, co-founding this great organization? And how has that been?
Yes, well, and I attended Sophia's podcast, the interview that you did with her not long ago, and I hope I'm not repeating things that she said. Maybe I will say them from a slightly different perspective, but so we found that we knew that there were a lot of talented women out there working in the space. We'd met them, and yet when we looked at conferences and webinars and panels, all we were seeing were men. There would be panels of 4 and 5 men, always talking about these topics, and never any women. And so we wanted to come together to expose more women to the world, to give them a chance to share what they were doing, and give them a platform for speaking, and to practice and hone their speaking skills. That was one of our initial goals. And we decided that let's just get together with women we know in the industries. We'll just invite them into a virtual world. We'll hang out together and we'll talk about what it is that we're doing. And so this exposed those of us who were in attendance, which continue to grow and grow, and we saw and still see that there's a great hunger for this. That we were learning about one another's work, which allowed us to then amplify it, and to amplify her voice, and to do what we say is speaking her name in a room where there is opportunity. Wow. So if we know the work that a woman is doing, and we happen to be in a place where we hear that there is a possibility, we can bring her up. We can raise her name. We can put her in touch with people. And we can also, talk about the work of these women on social media platforms, and we can, like and share and, really amplify their voices and put them out there, all while we are learning not just about what they're doing, but about what is happening in the industry, the ways that the tech is being used. So it has been quite a journey, very exciting. We're up to 230 something events now. Tomorrow and over the years, we created all sorts of ancillary programs, including our XR Women Museum and Gallery, which is hosting a show right now that was curated by Paige Danzinger, who's the director of the XR Women Museum. And she's going to give a tour of that. It's in Frame VR. That's tomorrow. You can arrive starting at 11:45 a.m. Eastern time. And she's going to take us on a tour of that show and talk about the work of the artists. So you just go to framevr.io/XR Women Museum. Just show up and come along, and you can see some of the work of these incredible women artists.
Very powerful. We love Paige. I can't wait to have her on the show. And yeah, I can't wait for this virtual tour tomorrow. Awesome. And what I like about you building XR Women is that it's kind of along the theme of still learning that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like building an inclusive community, and then teaching the industry to recognize and elevate overlooked expertise, right? It's
Yes,
another way of teaching, but just in a bigger perspective. Awesome.
absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then we have a comment from Brian. Many people build walls around what they know and do not readily share their info. AI and XR are important since it ensures that there are none of these walls. The info is shared freely and with questions on how it help you learn more. Yes, thank you for
Mm.
sharing, Brian.
Yeah.
Yes, go
Mhm.
ahead, Karen.
No, I was just his comment made me think about the fact that we tend to get stuck in old patterns and old habits, and we have to really try to free our imaginations. And maybe it's easier for children to do this than it is for those of us who are a little older. But when it comes to, say, presenting, even at XR Women, we encourage our presenters to think about how they could make their presentations more spatial.
Mhm.
But most people, including myself, fall back into that habit of creating a slideshow, right? And this is something that we're trying very hard to break. I like the term the tyranny of the rectangle, which is something that I heard Tony Parisi say years ago, and it really stuck with me because all of our media is presented on these rectangular screens, and that's the way we think when we think about media, and it's really hard to break out of that. So we're trying to do things like encouraging presenters at XR Women to allow us to arrange their slides spatially throughout an environment rather than just presenting them on a screen. But there are many other ways to have a spatial presentation and to include 3D objects, for example. But it's something that we are trying to stretch our imaginations around and really make use of the full potential of XR tools.
Such a good point. Yes, we've been taught one way, and now we have to break these barriers because the tools are allowing us. Awesome. We do have a question from Felipe. This still learning concept is a gold mine. From a practical standpoint, how do you measure the learning outcome with the client without breaking the stills aspect of the user?
How do you measure the learning outcome without breaking the? Okay, I'm not sure I fully understand exactly what he's asking, but I think one of the things, and not all of the XR tools that we're using now are at that full stage of development that we know they are capable of. We don't have easy access to the ultimate expression of those capabilities. But when you think about things like, XAPI, this learning standard that is action based and therefore is much more suitable to XR environments than something that is based on, say, multiple choice questions, right? But it can tell you a lot more about what people are actually doing, and using that in the context of a learning management system can really provide some rich data and information. And that's, those sorts of integrations are really important with XR. They're challenging in a lot of ways. A lot of organizations are nervous about the security of devices and integrating with them and having them in their systems. But that's what really needs to happen in order to make use of the full potential of XR tools.
So not only our teaching should or training should be revolutionized, but also our assessment process should be revolutionized now that we have different tools.
Absolutely, yes, and I haven't ever stated it in that way, so thank you for phrasing it as such.
No, I thought that that's a really good angle to look at it, because I think what Felipe is asking is like, okay, we do make it as a contextual learning, but now how do we make sure that there is an outcome? So we just need to look at it differently and be more creative about assessment as well. Awesome. Cool. And we do have some other comments. Ian says children definitely have less burden of analysis paralysis. And Brian mentions that buildings, rooms, furniture, everything is rectangles in our civilization. Awesome. And yeah, lots of great comments. So I have a question in terms of these many events that you guys have hosted for XR Women. I believe it's like over 225 events. Is that right?
It's 237,
Oh, wow.
I think now.
More.
Yes, yes.
So I'm curious, what have you learned about, creating connections, doing collaborative learning, anything that is kind of non-obvious learning that we can kind of even communicate to brands and other companies that want to do this type of virtual experiences?
Yeah, well, it's really a magical thing to get to share space with people from all over the world in real time and get to interact with them and to speak with them, to have a back and forth conversation while you're facing their avatar. In some cases, turning on your webcam and have them actually see your face too, for platforms that are on desktop rather than in a headset. Um, but in terms of making those connections, one of the things that I think about is when we have an event, and I'm thinking of a particular environment that we've used before that has a place for speakers at the front and then some round tables that people would sit around, the audience would sit around. And when someone is where I decide to sit is based on the sort of human connection that I'm trying to make. If someone is there for the first time, I might go sit next to them to make them feel welcome. And or if it's someone who had attended a lot of our events but hadn't been for a while, maybe I'll go sit next to them to say, welcome back. It's nice to see you. Not that I might not say those things verbally. I would, but there's this other way that it's that spatial relationship
Mm,
that I think has some power and helps to form those connections.
really powerful. I didn't think about it that way. Amazing. Yeah. It is something that again, using the features that we have, and not just like, obviously you can chat with everybody and tag them, but this is just a different feeling.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. Being able to look at someone across the room and wave at them and have them wave back, is super cool.
And the spatial audio works when you're nearby, so that makes
That's
sense.
right. That's right. Yeah, spatial audio is a great thing because, with that sort of feature on, when you have large groups of people, you can break off into smaller groups and have more intimate conversations, and it's not everyone talking over everyone else. So that
Both.
is really cool.
Amazing. Cool. So now let's talk about a little bit about the enterprises that you worked with. Curious, what have you seen as, kind of common or the biggest mistake that these companies are making after they create a cool pilot project with XR, and then now they want to look into a long-term XR strategy. Where do you
Mhm.
think the lessons get lost?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think this may have been said when Sophia was on your podcast, and we were talking about the ways that a lot of companies feel like they need to reinvent the wheel. They need to, spend a lot of time, testing and trying this stuff out to see
Yes.
what it is, when in fact it is being used much more widely than we hear. Many companies are stay quiet about the work that they're doing with XR. And you know, if they did talk about it a little more and put it out there, they would become part of a larger conversation and maybe, you know, glean more information from others. But I think one of the biggest things is that you need to really institutionalize the technology. So you need to have champions at at a lot of different levels. At the end user level, you know, you need to have that kind of acceptance, and obviously you need people who have the authority to make these sorts of programs happen and to open up the purse strings. And you need stakeholders from different departments. And sometimes I see both in higher ed and in larger companies where there are these silos. There are small efforts using the technology taking place, and they're not coordinated. They're not working together. They're not sharing resources. And so developing, institutionalizing the technology and making sure that there is a central organizing structure is super, super important because of the ways that knowledge and resources can be shared across departments or divisions.
Amazing. Is there any example that comes to mind in terms of a company that has done it right?
I don't think I can give you a strong example of that right now. That
No worries.
yeah,
But just curious. I'm sure this space is very nascent, so a lot of great work is in the works.
yeah.
Hopefully, we will see them coming out soon.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I know you have been working on different compliance and standards like SOC2, ISO 27001. Maybe you can share a little bit about how they're impacting this trust and security or the safety aspect of these immersive experiences.
Yes, well, you know, a lot of larger companies, I mentioned before, sort of the distrust they have of some of these technologies and the concerns and worries about allowing them into their systems. And one of the ways that they try to alleviate some of those concerns is by requiring their vendors to have certain certifications or attestations like SOC 2 or 27001. 27001. And unfortunately, you know, these are complex, right? So getting that kind of a certification or an attestation for a small company is not that easy. And typically a lot of startups, they're focused on making their product.
Yeah.
Yes, but they need to be thinking about these kinds of standards from the start, and things like GDPR or PIPEDA, and you know, all of the different. They need to be aware of the regulatory landscape and some of the standards that are out there that they can follow in order to create more stable, secure, and robust products, and to earn the trust of enterprise organizations. Unfortunately, I think that some companies may use those sorts of processes as just you know, ticking boxes off, right? But it can be a great framework that allows you as a small company to develop your policies and the procedures that back those up. So making a commitment to you know, to follow one of these or to get some of these kinds of certifications or attestations can be really beneficial to a company that is just starting out in terms of the way they organize themselves and the ways that they do things.
Awesome. Do you have any suggestion of like where they should start?
Well, I think that it's going to vary a fair amount. And one thing that is hugely important, certainly if you're doing any sort of commercial product, you have to have the consumer in mind, and you have to think about where your end users are geographically, and where are your servers, and where is the data that you're taking in being processed, and how secure is that, and what regulations are they subject to. So you need to know the answers to those kinds of questions, and then also talk to potential clients and ask them, so what do you require of your vendors? And so figuring out in the space, the very particular space that you're working in, what are some of the most important things that you need to be paying attention to and following.
Amazing. I know this data security is a favorite topic of one of our audience members, Brian. So I hope that this was helpful information. Thank you for sharing. Awesome. Now let's talk about your big vision about XR. You look at it as the next computing platform that will free us from these rectangular screens we talked about. So to make this vision a reality, what is the most important thing our industry needs to learn right now to build that future responsibly and effectively?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we're in such an exciting time right now, because there are so many ways that immersive media and technology is starting to creep into our lives. Um, you know, we live in a 3D and 360 world. And we have to remember that. We have to free our imaginations, as I was saying before, and try to learn that the whole world is our canvas, and we need to use our imaginations to the fullest capacity with them. But when I attended AWE in June, I got to attend a screening of The Matrix at COSM, which is one of those theaters that has where the screen comes out overhead and around the side, and some ways on the floor. And they were showing The Matrix, which of course is an old movie that was filmed, for a rectangular screen. And in many cases, it was pretty obvious that, okay, there's a rectangular screen there, and then they've added some digital content around it. But other times it seemed almost seamless and really did give you that sense of being immersed. And then you have the Sphere, which I haven't visited, but if there's any reason I would ever go to Las Vegas, it would be to watch The Wizard of Oz in the Sphere. I can't wait. I really hope I have the opportunity to see that. But that too is kind of an immersive experience. And then we have a lot of AR functions on our phones and apps. And then there are the AI and AR glasses, including the Meta Ray-Ban displays, which I have not yet gotten to try, but I can't wait to get my hands on a pair to give them a go. But that puts us into that space where we are able to access a wealth of digital information without, being sucked into a small screen, confined on a rectangle, but we can interact with the world all around us while at the same time accessing digital information. Some of that through AI, which is obviously, an important part of XR, and XR is important to AI as being like an ideal interface for it. So I think, and with mixed reality in virtual reality headsets, which is super cool, mixing the digital content with the real world in an interactive way. But my point is that all of these things are sort of coming closer and closer together, and they're creeping into our lives, and we are becoming more familiar with them. And, I would love to see our smartphones replaced by smart glasses. And with things like the Meta Ray-Bans display, we're on our way there. It's super, super exciting.
And even the contact lenses and, easier and easier interfaces. So really good point. Thank you. And I'm curious, what is one core skill or mindset that you think every creative technologist or brand leader should focus on to develop, in themselves and stay ahead of the curve?
Wow. That's a tough one. One core skill. Well, I think, again, imagination is super, super important. Sometimes I say that the limits aren't the limits of the technology, they're the limits of the imagination, and that, our artists can dream up technologies that then the technologists go out and figure out how to make. And so the artists are the ones who are leading the way with their imaginations. But I think that, and curiosity, I think, maybe I'll stick with that. I'll say curiosity. So being curious about what is possible, trying new things, opening your mind, even if you don't have an imaginative vision yet, just being willing to explore and to try out some new things and see what is possible is hugely important. And I think most of us who are here have had that experience of talking to someone until you're blue in the face about what VR is, and they just don't get it until you put a headset on them, and then instantly it clicks and they start to understand what you can do with this technology.
Yeah, exposing ourselves to other possibilities and then, see where it takes us. Really good point. And I love that comment about imagination. I was talking to a founder during a Tech Week last week, and he was saying the less I think about the technology and free myself out of this, then I can be more creative and, lead my team in a better direction. I mean, I know we need to understand the technology, but we shouldn't limit ourselves by that alone. So that's good advice. Thank you.
Yeah. So that curiosity and constant learning, lifelong learning, never ever stop learning.
Yes. And Paige is saying it would be amazing in the future if we had artists' work from XR Women Museum on this sphere. Yes.
Wow. Yes. I want to see that happen. Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. So as we're approaching towards the end of the show, I would love to hear from you. What is the single biggest trend that you're seeing in the immersive learning space, either now or coming in the future? What is something that you're excited about?
Yeah, well, I think that I definitely am excited about the ways that AI can be integrated into learning spaces. And I think that a lot of us are still experimenting with that and figuring out what works well and what doesn't. How effective are AI chatbots in virtual worlds, for example? That's a, I've worked with them and have used them, and they can be great resources for learning, for having the learner be able to ask them questions. And but then there is also the data collection and analysis aspect of AI. So I think that the ways that AI and XR are used together is the place to be exploring right now.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This was such a powerful session. I learned a lot, Karen, and the stories that you shared were so amazing and intriguing. So curious, what's next for you, XR Women and Academy of Immersive Arts and Sciences?
Yes, sure. So I'm so glad we that you mentioned the Academy of Immersive Arts and Sciences. I said that tomorrow we have at XR Women a tour of the museum show curated by Paige Danziger in framevr.io/XR Women. And then next week we will hear from Wadua Wali from New Canvas. And the following week, we will be visiting the Edstucia platform with Christine Jansen and Yogini Joglekar. So that should be a really, all those should be good. Those are all before the end of the month, by the way. So we're, because we meet every week, those are coming up. And then next month, we'll be celebrating our 5th anniversary with a series of special events that are themed around that 5th anniversary. But the Academy of Immersive Arts and Sciences, which I co-founded along with Ben Irwin and Terry Schuessler a year and a half ago or so now, the big thing that we have coming up is Ready Player Golf. And this is one of our signature programs that was co-founded by Sophia Mashasha, also my co-founder at XR Women, along with Ben and Richard Ward and Chris Madsen. And this is a charity virtual golf tournament held in Walkabout Mini Golf. And the funds go to support the Children's Cancer Research Fund. And in particular, the Big Dreams Tour, which is a program started by James Arrigo and allows children to escape the confines of their hospital rooms or their homes, and to do things that they couldn't necessarily do through VR, and to create and to bring their imaginations to life. So this is taking place November 14th. You can sign up on readyplayergolf.org. It's $100 to play. You can create a team, recruit others to join your team to raise money for this fantastic cause, or you can just join another team that is there. It's going to start in a specially created clubhouse in the Engage platform, and then we will exemplify interoperability, which is a huge theme for us at the Academy of Immersive Arts and Sciences, by going through doors onto the Walkabout Mini golf course with your team to play your round. And then on the following day, November 15th, we have an award ceremony, and that promises to be super, super fun. I mean, last year's was just off the charts in terms of the experiences that we had together, and it was a lot of fun, and it feels so good to be able to use this fun activity in VR to benefit children who are suffering from cancer. So I really encourage you all to take part in Ready Player Golf. And then one more thing, before the end of the year, the Academy will be hosting a portal crawl. Our Meta Traversal series has these portal crawls where we go as a group across platforms to test the limits of interoperability today and try to glean lessons from that. And then the Polly's Immersive Awards will be taking place in March of 2026.
Wow, lots of amazing programs that you guys have planned. I don't know how you get to do all of this great work with creativity. So excited to check them out. Golf is one of the most attractive use cases of VR I've seen and heard. Even at MetaConnect, they talked about it. So really good and creative way of raising awareness and charity. Thank you so much for all the great work that you're doing for the community, for the good, for the children. You're so inspiring, Karen, and everyone in the XR Women loves you, and you're empowering everyone. So thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. And thanks to our amazing audience that were engaged with us throughout the show. Ian, Helen, Shadi, Yangus, Sosa, Paige, Sophia, Ritika, Brian, Casey, and everyone else who tuned in live. We're so grateful for you. And we actually have another XR woman, powerful woman, on the show next week. Celeste is going to be on the show. So excited for that. And thank you, Karen, for your time. And have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nico. Yes, Celeste Lear is the winner of the XR Women Trailblazer Award for 2025. And thank you so much for your kind words.
Yeah, of course. It was awesome. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.